Well, the arts are coming back this summer. It is so exciting for those of us who are patrons of the arts. And joining that return, of course, is the Cincinnati Opera. With us today is Evans Mirageas. He is the Artistic Director of the Cincinnati Opera. Evans, thank you so much for being with us.
It's my pleasure, Betsy. Thank you.
We will talk about the upcoming season in just a second, but we really can't talk about the upcoming season until we talk about last year. And it was going to be such a big season for the Cincinnati Opera. 100th year, had a great celebration planned, and then of course everything shut down.
And it was painful, obviously, because an opera company is, if it's about anything, it's about community. It's about building community, reaching out into the community in which you live to entice people to come into your opera house, but also to reach out into that community and share the joy of this incredible art form in so many different ways. So not only did we have to cancel our entire celebratory season, but all those things that we would normally do, like Opera Goes to Church and Opera Goes to Temple and our concert at the zoo and you name it, and all the special things we were going to do for our 100th, it was really painful. But when we had to announce that we were going to close, our wonderful board president said, don't just say you're not going to do things this summer. Before you announce it, figure out what you can do. And that was a tremendously inspiring thing from Liz Grubow and our brand new chief executive, Chris Milligan, who basically took over fully a week before the shutdown. He and Liz and the rest of the board, myself and my colleagues on the staff, simply pivoted. And I know it's a word that has gotten to be almost derogatory. People are tired of using that word, but we did. And we created online content. We created a 100th anniversary television documentary that was shown here on CET. And so, yes, it was awful. And I hope to never live through a summer again without opera. But we didn't let the spirit of what we believe in and who we are die with the season.
And I think that so many arts groups, yours included, were able to expand their footprint and reach a new audience because you were online and you had different platforms that you could really entertain people and educate people about what you do. And I think, you know, if there's a silver lining in all this, it's the technology part that really expanded everybody's reach.
Absolutely. One of our wonderful colleagues, who is the chief executive of the Philadelphia Orchestra, is named Matthias Tarnopolsky. And he wrote right after the shutdown, from one day to the next, I went from being a presenting organization to a video production company. and yet we have all learned so many great new skills. I mean, the CSO spent a great deal of money outfitting Music Hall with a very elaborate television camera setup for the future, most of it robotic. And so going forward, anyone who works in the hall has the opportunity to video capture their presentations in a very high quality. So yes, there are silver linings.
Let's talk a little bit about your background. You're from Michigan. Your expertise and your experiences really travel the globe, and you've had so many wonderful positions, record producer among everything else. But you mentioned that one of your first exposures to opera was at the Cincinnati Opera. How did that form what you wanted to do in your life?
I was a very new live opera fan when I came to Cincinnati Opera one summer in the late 1970s to follow a friend of mine who was actually a groupie. Well, not in the negative sense of the word, but she is a huge fan of the American baritone Cheryl Milnes. And Cheryl Milnes had a long relationship with this company from the mid-1960s onward. And he was singing one of his signature roles at Cincinnati Opera, Macbeth by Verdi, based on the famous play by Shakespeare. And this friend of mine, her name is Carol Wardgeland, she comes to the opera nearly every summer now, said, would you like to come with me to Cincinnati? I'm going to go see Milnes sing Macbeth. And I thought, why not? Summertime. I was footloose and fancy free. I took a couple of days off work and we came to Cincinnati. And I think my love for opera just intensified the moment I set foot in Music Hall. Because walking into this theater that many people take for granted, this is one of the finest halls for music, period, in the world. And it's right here at home in Cincinnati. Walking in and seeing the red velvet chairs and the incredible plasterwork and knowing from that instant it was going to be a great acoustic, and then seeing this spectacular production with the Cincinnati Symphony as the opera orchestra and one of the great world stars on stage, if this is opera, I like it.
And that's a really good point. I think that sometimes we overlook that we have this gem of music hall that's been here, for decades and decades, and it is certainly one of the jewels in our art scene here in our area. So Cincinnati Opera is back this summer, again in a little bit of a different form, but the most important thing is you're back, and then you're reaching perhaps a new audience again. Tell us about this upcoming.
I sincerely hope so. We began at the zoo, and the zoo was a pavilion. In other words, there was a roof over our heads, but it was somewhat improvised in the first couple of seasons. And from the very beginning, we had the Cincinnati Symphony. And when we realized that although we were hoping to make progress in the eradication of COVID-19 and the acceleration of vaccination, we knew that this summer we could not perform indoors to a full capacity crowd. And opera is an expensive art form. You need every ticket you can possibly get, plus, of course, 50 to 60% more dollars to make the season work from contributed income. So we looked around, we talked to our friends at the zoo, but they were getting ready to busily build this incredible new elephant habitat. Mm-hmm. We looked at other locations. And when we went to Summit Park, we thought, that's it. 3 acres of lawn in a beautiful setting, a purpose-built 100-foot long, 90-foot deep stage platform at one end, all the amenities nearby, accessible from both expressways. We'd found our new home, our temporary home. So if you come this summer, you will see what looks like a rock concert almost. In other words, we'll have that kind of stage that is a canopy over the stage floor from which we can hang lights and loudspeakers. Because it's a 3-acre area, we will have to very sensitively mic the singers in the orchestra, mm-hmm. and jumbotrons. So the people who are sitting all the way back at the back of the 3 acres, as it were, will be able to see the incredible performances that we'll be delivering.
Carmen, Tosca, and the Barber of Seville, we will be able to see those. Is that part of, let's say, the long term of the Cincinnati Opera? You always have to grow your base. You want to keep your subscriptions and your season ticket families still coming back, but you need to grow that audience. You need a younger generation to come in. Do you think that making these pivots, being outside, and frankly, you are a master at using social media. I love your videos that you talk about performances and connecting with nature and things like that. You really touch a lot of people with that social media. Is that part of the growth strategy for not just the opera, but arts in general?
One of the surveys that gets conducted from time to time talks about, so what was the first reason you came to opera? And still more than 60% of people who take an operatic experience for the first time say it was a familiar title. And there are, like in any art form, there's a top 10. We will never lose sight of the fact that one of the ways we get new audiences is by producing masterpieces. So it's part of the company's future to maintain a commitment to the core repertoire. But there are a couple of new strings to our bow, particularly in the last 15 years, during my tenure, and immediately before me, my predecessor, Nick Muni, started this. If you don't create new work, if you don't inspire the composers of this generation, if you don't recognize the social world in which you live and respond to the social issues of your day, then you're just a museum form. And I have nothing against museums, by the way. But if an art form does not start generating new work, it will die. And even museums, of course, have contemporary exhibitions and sponsor artists. So what we have been able to do is to continue to embrace what we call the ABCs of opera, Aida, Bohème, and Carmen, the most popular operas of all, and at the same time have a rich vein of new compositions that we either commission ourselves or co-commission with other opera companies to keep the art form vibrant. Because the other thing we've found out is that audiences trying opera for the first time sometimes are intimidated by the beauty of music hall. But a smaller space, a less traditional space with a smaller opera that isn't sort of, breastplates and horns and spears is equally appealing, particularly to a younger audience. Mm-hmm. So I think what we're trying to do is a multiple strand approach to maintaining that entryway into opera for a certain part of the population who wants to come to something familiar at first, and also stimulating the imagination of the growing young population of Cincinnati. Look at all the statistics. The city is on the rise. And we're capturing them, we hope, with new types of ways, new operas and new ways of presenting opera. I mean, for example, this summer, one of the things we're hoping is that with these specially constructed 90-minute versions of the operas, we'll get people who might not want to be able, want to have their first operatic experience be 2.5 hours. An hour and a half, 8:30 to 10 over twilight, not a bad idea.
What a great setting too. Summer at Summit. Get your tickets and have a wonderful experience, whether you are an opera veteran or if you're brand new to it. It's a great time to enjoy the Cincinnati Opera. Evans Mirageas, the Artistic Director from the Cincinnati Opera. Thank you so much for being with us.
A pleasure, Betsy. Thank you.